All right, so you know how some companies are so big, so iconic, you don't even need to see their name to know who they are?
Yeah, like just a symbol is enough.
Exactly. I'm talking about Nike.
Ah, the swoosh.
But, there's a lot more to their story than just a catchy logo and some killer marketing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We're talking volatile revenue, rumors of some leadership shakeups, not to mention cutthroat competition.
It's a real battleground out there in the sportswear industry.
So today we're going deep, a deep dive into Nike.
Trying to figure out, is this a company that's still got what it takes to be a champion?
Or are they headed for the sidelines?
Big questions.
And before we go any further, if this is your first time joining us, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future deep dives.
We've got a lot of good stuff coming up.
All right, so first things first.
Before we decide to buy, got to understand the company, right?
Absolutely. We need to know the basics. What exactly is Nike's core business these days?
At the end of the day, they're all about athletic gear.
Okay, so the shoes, the apparel.
Exactly. But it goes beyond that. We're talking equipment, even digital fitness devices now.
Oh, wow, so they're not just sneakers anymore.
Nope, it's like a whole ecosystem.
And are they mostly focused on the U.S. or?
Oh no, this is a global operation. They're in something like 170 countries.
Wow, that's impressive.
But even with all that, footwear is still their main event.
Really?
Oh yeah. In 2024 alone, their footwear brought in over $29 billion in revenue.
That's incredible, though I have to imagine they've got some pretty stiff competition.
Oh, absolutely. You've got your Adidas, Under Armour, Puma, all the usual suspects.
It's like a constant race to the top, right?
Exactly. And then on top of that, you've got these new companies coming out of nowhere.
Like startups and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of them are focused on very specific niches, or they're using some crazy new technology.
So it's even harder for Nike to stand out.
Yeah, the game's definitely changed.
Well, speaking of changing, let's talk about leadership.
Okay, you thinking about those management shakeup rumors?
Yeah. I mean, Nike's leadership has a history of success, but their recent performance has been, well, let's just say a little shaky.
There have been some analysts saying maybe it's time for a change at the top.
I mean, is the pressure really that high?
There are definitely some people questioning whether the current leadership can really adapt to this new landscape.
I mean, they've got quite a legacy to live up to.
Yeah.
It all started with, was it Bill Bowerman and Phil Knight?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their vision is like the foundation of Nike.
It's kind of what makes this whole thing so interesting,
Yeah, like they have this amazing past.
But the future's not so clear.
Exactly. A lot of uncertainty.
So to really understand where they're headed, we got to look at their financial fitness.
Yep, time to crunch some numbers.
Let's start with revenue. Are we talking steady growth, or is it more like a roller coaster?
Honestly, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster.
Oh.
Back in 2021, they saw a huge jump, like a 19.1% increase in revenue.
Oh.
But since then, things have been slowing down, and it's become a lot less predictable.
That kind of volatility can make investors nervous, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So what about profitability? Are they making money on what they're selling?
Well, the good news is that their gross profit margin has been pretty stable, around 44.5% over the last 5 years.
Okay, so they're not just selling a lot, they're selling it smart.
Exactly, managing those costs.
Okay, so now what about debt?
Mm-hmm.
Are they playing it safe or taking on some risk to stay competitive?
That's an important question. Right now, their debt-to-equity ratio is at 0.86.
So what does that mean for someone who's not a financial expert?
Well, think of it like this.
Okay.
For every dollar they have invested in the company, they also have 86 cents of borrowed money.
That's a lot of debt.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, to really understand how they're handling that debt, we got to look at free cash flow. How much cash do they have left over after all the essential expenses are paid?
Right, like keeping the lights on and investing in new stuff.
Exactly. And for Nike, that free cash flow is strong and it's growing, which is a good sign.
So they have some room to maneuver, make some moves.
Yeah, they're not strapped for cash.
All right, before we move on to the market sentiment and the bigger picture, let me remind everyone.
So check out those links in the description.
Yeah, all the research we're using for this deep dive is down there so you can follow along.
And hey, while you're down there, let us know in the comments what stocks you'd like us to look at next.
We're always open to suggestions.
Yeah, we love hearing from you guys.
Okay, so their financials seem pretty solid, but numbers only tell one side of the story right.
For sure.
What's the overall feeling? Like, what's the market sentiment around Nike right now? Are investors optimistic about their future, or are they a little worried?
It's really a mixed bag.
Oh, really?
You've got some people who see Nike as, like, A classic comeback story waiting to happen.
Okay, I could see that.
They point to things like their brand recognition, everybody knows Nike.
Yeah, that swoosh is everywhere.
Exactly. And then there's the cash flow. We just talked about how strong that is.
Right, and they've consistently paid dividends.
Which is a big draw for a lot of those value investors.
So there's a sense that maybe Nike is undervalued right now.
Yeah.
That they have the potential to really bounce back.
Yeah, that's definitely one perspective. But on the other hand,
There's always another hand.
you've got investors who are a little more hesitant and a little more cautious.
What are they worried about?
They're concerned about the slowdown in sales growth, and of course, the competition is just getting fiercer.
And it's not just the big names, right?
Nope, all those new players are really shaking things up.
So they're worried Nike can't keep up. Maybe they're not agile enough to adapt to all these changes.
That's the concern.
So what are the analysts saying?
The consensus rating right now is a moderate buy.
Moderate buy. What does that even mean?
It's basically like they're not totally convinced, not ready to go all in.
Kind of sitting on the fence a
A
little.
little bit, and you can see that in the price targets, they're all over the place.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some analysts are saying hold, some are saying strong buy. It's a wide range.
Well, that doesn't give us a very clear picture.
It doesn't. But there have been some interesting calls lately. Piper Sandler and D.A. Davidson, both pretty big names, they both issued buy ratings recently.
So some people are definitely feeling bullish on Nike.
Yeah, some think a comeback is on the horizon.
Okay, well, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about the people who actually own the stock. Who are the major players, and how much influence do they have on Nike's direction?
That's where we look at ownership structure, and with Nike, it's pretty interesting.
So who are we talking about here?
Well, a big chunk is held by institutional investors. These are your big investment firms, hedge funds, pension funds, that kind of thing.
The big guys.
Exactly. And they hold a lot of the stock. We're talking over 64%.
So when they make a move, it can really make waves.
Oh, yeah. They have a lot of influence. Then you've got company insiders, the people who actually work at Nike.
So like the employees and executives.
Yep, and they own a little over 1% of the stock.
It's always interesting to see how invested the people running the company actually are.
Yeah, it can be a good sign.
Now, you mentioned that institutional investors hold a big chunk of the shares. Does that mean regular, everyday investors don't really have a voice?
It's not that they don't have a voice, it's just that there's a lot of concentration at the top.
What do you mean?
Well, the top 16 investors in Nike control 50% of the stock. That's a lot of power in the hands of a few.
So even though there are tons of shareholders, a small group is really calling the shots.
Pretty much.
So does that mean, like, one or two big players could just come in and completely change the direction of the company?
It's not quite that simple.
Okay.
It's unlikely that any single shareholder could completely dominate, but those top investors, they do have a lot of sway.
So it's something to consider when
Yeah.
you're thinking about investing.
Definitely.
Okay, so big question time.
The million-dollar question.
Is Nike a buy?
That's what we're all trying to figure out.
You got to give us something to work with here.
All right. So Nike has a lot of the things that value investors look for.
Okay, like what?
Strong brand recognition, which we talked about.
Yeah.
Solid and growing free cash flow, consistent dividend payouts.
So far, so good.
Oh, and Morningstar currently gives them 4 stars with a fair value estimate of $117.
So there's a case to be made that they are undervalued,
There is.
but
It's not a sure thing. You have to consider the risks.
like what?
Well, the competition is fierce. Can Nike really keep up? Can they stay ahead of the curve?
And what about those rumors of a leadership shakeup? Is that going to happen?
That's another big question mark.
So it's not a guaranteed slam dunk.
Definitely
A
not.
lot of potential, but also some real challenges.
It's all about weighing those risks and rewards. Do they align with your investment goals?
Right, everyone's situation's different.
Exactly.
You know, one thing I've been thinking about is Nike's sustainability efforts.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one these days.
Are they actually making progress when it comes to, like, ethical sourcing and their environmental impacts?
It's definitely something consumers and investors are paying more attention to, and Nike knows that.
So they're trying to do better.
They have implemented some initiatives, things like improving working conditions in their supply chain and using more sustainable materials.
And are they making a difference?
They've also set some pretty ambitious targets for reducing their carbon footprint.
That sounds promising, but are they just talking the talk, or are they actually walking the walk?
I think it's fair to say it's a work in progress. There's always more that can be done.
So some people think they need to move faster.
Definitely. Some critics say they're not doing enough. Others say they're on the right track.
So it's really up to each investor to decide if they believe in what Nike is doing.
Exactly.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from their business model to their financials, the market sentiment, and even sustainability.
It's been a deep dive.
It's clear that Nike is a company with a rich history, but the future is still unwritten. They have a lot going for them, but they also face some serious challenges.
And ultimately, the decision of whether or not to invest is up to each individual listener.
Right. We can't make that call for you.
But hopefully, this deep dive has given you the information you need to start making an informed decision.
And don't forget, all of our research is linked in the description so you can take a closer look for yourselves.
Always do your own research.
And remember, everything we talked about today is just for informational purposes. It's not financial advice.
Always do your own research before making any investment decisions.
Absolutely. So until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and as always, thanks for joining us for the deep dive.